oh no, this is a message to the world as to why it is this guy, Mike Fail, hi, I'm Mike Fail, should run for president again in 2024 in the face of what might be a legal impossibility and a statistical highly improbability, and and I thought, well, why else? Why else shouldn't I? Now Hitler was a painter before he became an authoritarian, and George Bush. Let's skip me for a second. George Bush started painting after he was an authoritarian, and now I thought, well, maybe I should become an authoritarian after I paint, but then I thought, well, no, don't become an authoritarian. Become like a benevolent minarchist with a retooling and a redefinition of corporate America amongst the other exclusionary, historically idealized superpowers, and try to figure out not necessarily who's going to be the champion of the world. I think the U.S. already won that one in a way, not just because of Hollywood and Disneyland either, but because of a lot of the other accomplishments where Europe seemed to sit on its hands a lot. The U.S. is quite innovative. Not saying that all of Europe isn't innovative and there's not great minds over there. That's there's great minds there. I'm wondering where else in the world there are great minds, and I would imagine there are actually great minds and great actions and great lives occurring all over this planet. All right. Well, that being said, I guess if anyone wants to make a commercial out of this, they're more than welcome to do so. That's hardly a good video though. All right. So the nature of Svengali Dakini. Svengali Dakini are energetic forms. And what I was working on today were the idea of an open form, right? As opposed to, sorry, I got a hair in my mouth, like a human hair in my mouth, even like this kind of form, like let's say I'm going this direction, now this direction, so that would be the left side of your screen to the right side of your screen. Now, and you got to pass through a passage that's like that, or it's like that, right? So it's gonna condense you, or it's gonna allow you. And so the history of libertarianism from a monarchism and not like from communism is an interesting distinction to make when people are attempting to track neoliberal ideas as a descent from monarchy, as if the 1960s never happened, as if 10 whole years of human history never happened, as if there was no relationship to the government and hegemonies of war and nation states and populations expanding and the rise of an Aryan Brotherhood and the rise of the Black Panthers and the rise of drug libertarian or drug liberalism, if you will. So basically, there's this idea that what is at liberty is what is at one's will, and there's a lot of. But by the way, before I get into this whole representational, Schopenhauer, the noumena phenomena, the Derridian. Is life a type of death or death a type of life sort of coupling. like this dichotomous yin-yangy, them, me, thy, thee, like a self ideology. Like if I'm self ideologic, right, then that means I believe that not only my life is properly patterned, that because, if you knock out kids, which, someone else knocks out those, I don't have the parts for it, apparently. Just saying. And so someone else, if I'm out fucking and I'm going screwing, not that I do a lot of screwing, but I did a lot of screwing and I hope to do more screwing. Women, pussy, vaginas, human women, not trannies, by the way, not assholes either. Not fucking any man up the ass or ever getting fondled up the ass is pretty much my cis male character. And that being said, I still wouldn't have a first lady even if I did win the presidency because I have issues. I guess that would be the formalization. If one was to do like an archaeological dig on my psychology, um, from the future, not even contemporaneously, like a diachronic archaeological back chronos belief that whatever the data is that's put forward or recorded or whatever God, Google God, there's Google God, and then there's God. And I keep keep wanting to separate those two, but even the God could possibly be like an overextension of the Google God, or the Google God could be one with God. That being said, any difference that one makes in the world and any choices that they make generally seem to have an ontos or a directional angle to them, not just convex or concave, and not just like a Venturian or reduction or an expansion and an allowance or a more voluminous, post parabolic shape, like a woman's shape down from the bosom and the chest down to the hip, and then the trochanter, and then the outside flesh. Oh God, I can't even tell you guys. There's just some fertility goddesses, and like on a magic scale, I need to work it on a conventional scale, maybe not so much. But I still, don't having kids, think it would be really great if I had kids and raise kids. Even at this ripe old age of whatever I am, in the face of statistical notions of how long my generation's average lifetime is going to be, and then my individual relationship to that. I mean, I am the drunken master. It just happens to be the case that I've always been a drunken master, but maybe the master part is debatable. Of course, I don't want to say that, but then again, after you listen to this, so I live above some troglodytes that like to argue all day and night sometimes if they could, but I yell at them too, and sometimes they shut up, and that's nice. Okay, so there's already a technology to level out all plastics that could be distributed to each state. There needs to be underground tiles in Iowa in terms of underneath their topsoil, such as a reclamation or a maintenance of water flow. Those are like generally set 4 to 6 feet beneath a certain topsoil level. The pandemic, even the hard questions on how is the pandemic supposed to be held? Is natural immunity okay? I know people still that have not been vaccinated, they're doing just fine. I know other people that are totally vaccinated, they're doing just fine. And my brother wasn't vaccinated and he's dead. And That being said, there was this idea of how much how much retort. Oh, excuse me, someone's at the door. All right, what do we got?
Oh, I told my friend, I said that.
Oh.
I think one day, I think like $4 actually I don't have $4.
No, gracias. That is.
Yeah, no, I don't see nobody, there. That's pushing him very hard, and I say, oh,
No, it is.
Yeah,
it's
I watch it anytime,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna take something off.
I got this piano here I was playing, and I was sitting there, I was getting paint on that there painting.
Yeah, that's nice.
Other sort of painting. Oh, look at that. You got a wet t-shirt contest without the contest. Yes. But I don't mind, and she might mind, but don't mind, lady. Oh, what an asshole I am.
Sorry, I told you more for that. I think nobody there, but it was nice to see you.
No, I was just letting the cats were out, and I was like yelling.
That's fine. You see that I watch anything.
Stevens?
I watch anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, I figure with your new camera and all, you're watching everything.
No, it's not. I see that one video. So maybe
No, I'm glad, because this thing, I've had this since 2007.
Why not working, Papa?
What's that?
Why not working?
I don't have a welder. I never bought one. I don't have access. I don't have a garage. That's the thing. I don't have a garage to own anything.
Let's take it out.
Well, it's,
you can take it out.
You can pull it out. It's pulled out off of the front.
Yeah,
mostly, I think right there.
Oh, you don't take it out that one. You only take it out that one right here. And take it out the door out. See, it's got a room for coming out. Yeah.
Ceviche? I got a pub.
I have a beer.
You want it? These are pubs right here. See? And then this. Have you had one of these? Let me show you.
I never tried that kind. Oh yeah, you give me one time ago.
Yeah, you want that? Dude, that probably helped my liver. You took it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just doing a thing. Recording and doing photos and trying to figure out painting. Like an inverted map. Like I think I'm gonna paint an inverted map.
It's a same. Remember when I put it in you check? When I bring you check?
At what time?
That 2-3 months ago. Remember I bring?
What the beer?
Yeah, no, one check. That's I found it over there. I
yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, that definitely helped.
Yeah, anytime that's I watch it, anything wrong. All right, my friend.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Jesus, so good. And so there's this notion of how far the human migration versus modern notions of immigration and cultural influence are considered population-based instead of legal historic adherence-based. And that generates a bit of a quagmire when one is considering contemporary notions of border difficulties or crossing, such that one doesn't have a melting pot or a fixed notion of how green card or work visas or anchor babies or any number of other things could possibly play out. Generally, though, the idea of trying to secure it so that it's not overly inflated beyond like all possible structural form is really what is at play on the conservative side of things. And I would dare say, when I was in El Paso and below Phoenix on the way to San Diego and in Laredo, there was just open borders, right? Like we've had open borders for God knows how long, the idea that we're filming the movement of humans and we're saying, like, because we're the greatest, we have the greatest economy, therefore all these people are trying to get over here. It's not untrue, but the idea that there's not North Americans that like to move below the U.S.-Mexico border is also, if you didn't think there was a lot of people that like doing that, you'd be wrong. There's tons of Canadians that like to just skip America and fly to Mexico. And Americans have been propagandized too, and for some good reason. It's the same reason like Koreans don't want to send their kids to Los Angeles. They'd rather send them to like Nebraska or Utah or something like that, where they're considered safer than Los Angeles, maybe even than New York. And so there's this idea that Mexico is a dangerous place. Just like Kiev, when I was in Kiev, Kiev was a semi-dangerous place. Now this is 2018, and there was shell going on in Donetsk, which was a border town east of Kiev by, I don't know, 150, 200 miles, something like that. I think that was it. Anyway, a lot of the people from Donetsk were moving into Kiev, and so the capital city was getting a lot of stuff. And I'm living in a capital city. I live in Salt Lake City. If any of you come here, any of you come here, I'm gonna have to. Anyway, oh, make certain folks, it's a show. Our sponsor this evening, when I'm not being paid, is Kona Island Seltzer. This here is a reminder of your future as the goat. The goat. Well, let me get the goat. The goat, aka in Egyptian, the dromos. The dromos, not the sphinx. Once again, this is just for everyone's modern edification. So governmental systems, even prior to Plato, were well enacted. And now I like the dromos not because this goes here, but because it busted and it went there. Right. So if you look at it from the right angle, like right there, it just almost looks like the cat, like the goat, is laying on its side a little bit. It's just a little bit. It's laying on its side just a little bit. It's not like just a little bit, right? And so you got this thing with the dromos, which is part of the Deadlands and the Dead Field, which is where I drove a lot of times, in the Deadlands and the Dead Field. But really, every organism, is its own bubble. But the relational dynamics, the compactor, if you will, this is a compactor wall right here. So you kind of like, and then let's say you're in Star Wars and they're in that compactor scene in the first Star Wars, right, where Leia and Luke are in the compactor and they're busy trying to run a line between it. And so this here is a little escape patch, and then down here is the guy behind the curtains that's going to probably escape. And this one's killing this guy, and this guy's checking this guy's brain. And then down here we have another kind of like a wrestling into death, like how old age will capture Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg before it will the babies born today. Durr, ba-da-boom, durr, ba-da-boom, durr. There has been a generalization, if you will, about the means in which my particular generation has functioned or not properly functioned, and it was a good critique. It was almost an upset about the being caught up, like almost a criticism, like of a Mendham or myself or somebody else that has some sort of despot, non-directional, non-idealistic notions about how things should be dealt with. And I analyzed it deeply. By the way, Speaking of analyzing things deeply, this is my Hunter Biden makeup. Like, hey, I'm not Hunter Biden, but if I was running for president against Trump and against Biden, wouldn't you like me better than what I look like, which is maybe Hunter Biden? So once upon a time, back in the day, there was a country that had spilled out of its own pipage. It had a leak, a diagonal, overflowing money leak, and an information leak, and an AI leak, and a global future based on future projections and who can play in the way the world actually unfolds, right? The reason why I run for president is not merely for power, and it has to do with finding actual policies on the books, finding any contrary executive powers on the books, deciding which exercise could be done in the executive branch, and then having a will to remove, as T.Y. said, the Young Turks once said, get money out of politics, like gut it. Right? And they said that as like their whale cry before they caved in to capitalism and totally sabotaged themselves and unloaded Dave Rubin and Jimmy Dore. And anyway, the whole point is that there has to be a not only a retooling, a re-emphasis of certain laws that are on the book, and a diminishment of certain laws that are on the book or exercised. And like Glass-Steagall, you want to make certain that the banks are not investing your money in the markets, because that insists that America is a profit-driven marketplace, which it's proven itself to be through the overinflation and the indefinite inflationary tossing arounds of money that seem responsibly irresponsible, or responsibly irresponsible, like they're purposely irresponsible, like let's just throw it out like it's a fucking jubilee. The problem is it's not a jubilee, not really. It's not really a jubilee, but it's maintaining, like people aren't dying in the street, and then after COVID everything's not after COVID, but in this new quote unquote climate of viral diseases, even it's like I don't want to deny that genetic manipulation and viral and airborne diseases and genocodes through CRISPR, other human intelligence, godlike intelligence, if you would have this particular power to it, unfortunately. And the reason why I'm running under a campaign to elect Mike Fail, I'll go grab the paperwork in a minute, and mutant management has to do with managing mutants. Right, and so you got to manage mutants. In order to manage mutants, you got to make certain that your syncopato, your also a priori, like hey, thumb first, not pinky shake. Your ping pong, your Ari, I'm Ari, and your Kona, meaning. There's no sense in taking virtues that one might pin to their viscera, their gene, their genome code, and presume that some sort of extant extension, an existent, present historic extension doesn't diachronically or step ladder itself through the z-axis of time to the present, provided that you got the the X and Y plane pretty much are the present, and the Z axis is the future and the past. And you're just kind of reading it left to right, right? Like you're not privy to the end of the project. And if you are, then you imagine dragons, you imagine war, you imagine integration, you imagine laws, and form, and connection, and relation, and by the way, you imagine multiculturalism, which is precisely why my roommate, who's an quote unquote African American, I would say is a black dude. And I even argue with him that Abraham Lincoln was a black guy, right? That's why they put him on the copper coin. Copper was no more special than zinc. Really, I don't think. Maybe you can tell me what I'm thinking is off, and maybe you won't, because I'm pinky clapping. Anyway, moral story. Country needs retooling, and so each federal law simply means to be registered and actuated, diminished, removed, or put on high alerts. And this is what's beyond contradiction in law. Laws that run contradictory, so one goes and becomes diminished and the other one doesn't. Look at this. Bastards. Look at this. Look at this cat fight. Come on. Get on. Get on. Get on. Come on. Get on. Look at it. Come on. Look at it. Get on. That's right. Raw. See, that's America. That's Russia. That's China. That's America. That's Russia. And, America. If America's the melting pot, this might be Europe. Yeah, probably Russia. God, ching ching, guys. Ching ching in the fight department. Okay, so punch. This high octane splatterfest stars my brother Doug. And it's a wicked film. I recommend that you guys check it out. Why do I tell you this? Because there's sub Hollywood and there's sub continental, sub cultural, whatever I say that I am, sub. Ow. That guy told me on Venice Beach before I painted him, that clown. He told me that his wife and his 2 children died in a plane flying up, I believe, from Argentina to Mexico. And they died on the plane. The plane never made it, and his life was ruined, and he made it to the States, and he became a clown. And he was Caucasian as any European. It's like a Brit. His English was pretty good, too. It was just a horrific story how he became a clown. But he lived in a motorhome with 2 women, 2 young women, I think he was having sex with. Or trying to. Or maybe he wasn't. I didn't know. I just knew. 2 young women in their 20s. This guy's shit in his probably late 60s. Were living in his motorhome, and he was teaching them clowning. He didn't tell me what else there was, but honka. Okay, so now I'm in good business with my t-shirt company. Pog LLC, I bang, not I bang bros. Although it's hilarious. It's I bang radio. Good God, I bang radio. Anyway, so these guys are going to be pumping out some shirts for me, hopefully. And oh God, why was I fighting this? I've been fighting a few things with you guys, right? Like my audience. Okay, so who's that? That's Little Red Riding Hood. Never did think you could. Big to your big bad wolves. Oh. Na. So this little magician here is in a bubble, and he's got a wand, like a paintbrush, on the inside of a canvas even. And here's a witchy little pair while this guy's getting his wand put in the brain, very Neuralink. And then this guy's almost getting shot in the head, almost like a metaphor for the restrictive wall. Possibly not. That we'll have America, see America in brown, and then down here South America coming out of the wall along with these like herpy extensions, like white heads, like big fat gooey white heads that are sticking out. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And then look, this here's a bad ankle, and that there's a bad ankle, and that there's a curtain thing and a curtain thing, and those are some batteries for something, and a lot of paints. And I should be president. See, and I got troglodyte hillbillies living below me, and I got cats above me, and I got a 6-pack of beer. So you guys can keep checking in. Anyway, the whole point is this: how to enter and decorporatize and destructure and attempt to amplify and leave inert several laws, provided that I want a detailed format of what an intended president would do as almost a guide to the Senate, as the Senate being corrupt. You would have to make certain that every senator that came along with this tremendous fucking party, the cherry picker party, I might even have a running mate, not a running mate, a competitor, maybe a running mate, Christie, who might debate me on the stage for president. She might register as well. By the way, I'm still registered. Cannabis is legal now. The cherry picker party can use any law, right or left, leftist, rightist, or whatnot, and attempt to encourage the senators to migrate the legal position to a favorable shape, right? So I don't want to say that the open border policy is a bad idea. But it might need to be more restrained to fit the idealism that has to do with the notion of systemic racism or white structures, as if the post and lintel doorway itself was somehow a Caucasoid invention, right? With this presumption that brilliance stems from either like, oh, look, I'm Jewish, so Jews are great, or oh, look, I'm Caucasian, so or white people are great. Oh, look, great, I'm black, so black people are great. Or, oh, great, look, I'm Asian, so Asians are great. Or, oh, look, great, I'm East Indian, so East Indians are great. Oh, good, look, I'm Tongan or Filipino, or Eskimo, indigenous. So these people are great. The idea of modern stratification, because it can be conceptualized. It's the difference between eisegesis and exegesis. You should not just be describing the world. It's okay to hold a projection of the world, but if you believe what you are projecting, then that just means you're holding a preferenced bias that I believe has been built up and over time matters of difference of relations and whatnot, attending to a disordering or something that is expounded enough. I'm not saying it's indefinitely expansive or indefinitely liberal, but that the edge of how it's liberal we would not know in terms of speech or in terms of conduct or in terms of art form or so there's the mopey, there's the chaotic, there's the emo, and there's a French girl on Venice Beach, and her parents were interesting. And that's the state I live in case any of you numbnuts ever drive through and dare to do a shout out, because, man, sometimes it gets boring around these here parts. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Do you? Do you? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So anyway, then there's this notion of me being God or the center of the universe, and these are like somehow these connective points, right? And somehow I wonder, like, why did I produce these connective points as pre-material, pre-matter, pre-refraction, pre-intelligentsia within one's mind, to the expanse that it is, to the brilliance that it can be, to the non-normative, non-blue-collar, non-Mark Wahlberg, non-Americana, Detroit, whatever Eminem the fuck was, but it's something a little bit more sensitive, but still possibly more chaotic, which is something not disakin to whatever Bitmain or Main could possibly be. Could possibly be. Could possibly be. Could possibly be. There's not a baker's dozen in my witch's coven. There's a baker's dozen in my goddess den. Some of them probably don't even bake. Today is Johnny Cat time with Tom Waits and a hole of the hole. An empty Foster's, some nut turners, some bolts, crankers, some non-chimichanga kimchi, and a light, which I don't believe is plugged in, because this is not a delight. Anyway, there was this Shannon Kringen lady, and she was in Seattle, and she was pretty cool. And I don't want to do stream of conscience, but when I titled this "Reasons Why I Should Run for President" and some other bullshit, and then I think I got rid of the word bullshit, it just had to do with not really knowing in to what extent I would, at this stage, at this low level, be able to lift up, like Atlas, something against this fucking part douchebag, but not part douchebag. Just a little out of touch, a little too corporate, a little too much money, a little too silver spoon, a little, he doesn't know the grit, he doesn't know humanity or Americana from the street. Now, I wasn't upper class and I wasn't lower class, I was lower middle class. And anyway, I would say, and I've moved up a class, and I've also moved down a class. like 2 step backwards, so probably 2 steps down. So I'm closer to lower class, like upper to lower class. And so I'm a little bit more tuned into it without being on the streets. Thank God I'm not on the streets, because thank God for good people, good networks, good ideas, good storm, good function. But it allowed the mindscape to traverse like it was orbiting itself. Right? And when the mindscape orbits itself, then that itself is so that was kind of the Shannon Kringen, the goddess Shannon Kringen show. Just like cut loose and let the bottom drop out as if there's not a bottom, which is the erroneous pun that her character and persona sort of is. And God, it just an allowance to be a little bit dullard. But that being said, right, there's also this high Dakini speed of 5, as if you're ricocheting amongst 5 within a pentagram, right? And so as you're moving through this pentagrammal shape, you're also oh man, it's just hilarious. It's just hilarious. You're just mapping your exterior, right? It's the idea that look, the pentagram itself is considered like an evil thing, but the pentacle is merely a design that fancies on witches, right? But it's an exterior like the rim of a drum, right? If you drew a pentagram on the rim of the drum, you would have something very specific. Anyway, so get a load of this. Freddie Mercury. All right. So anyway, this will be the end. God, I hardly had fun with launching missiles towards mid California. Okay, so I'm gonna file. I am gonna file the business. I have to, and then report. So if you guys want donations, or want to give donations to my campaign to elect Mike Fail, mutant management, because once again we didn't even touch upon really the mutations that people are going to be experiencing in order to get through this quote unquote venturi of passing through time and having their seed and their offspring pass through time. Right, and anti-natalism once again. Jesus Christ, take that. I mean, by default, I'm still coming up short. You might think. I might think, but let's have that crisscross shape. Use Christendom as the BB on the top of the gun to do the lineup, and you guys all have a very, 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 very good evening.